lesser understood requirements of ISO 22000, 2008. Karthik, can I go to the next slide? How do I do it?
You operate, just go to the next slide in your laptop. It's as usual you are operating.
I tried that, it's not.
Just enter.
Enter. It's not taking. Yeah, okay. First point to understand is the scope in the new standard. The point which we have to understand here is this standard is to seek certification or registration of its FSMS by an external organization, or please keep this in mind, please read it loudly along with me, make a self-assessment or self-declaration of conformity to this document. So as a consultants, when we develop it and implement it, and when we tell them that this is as per the standard, they should understand that certification is not a requirement as per the standard. They can self-declare about the conformity to this ISO 22000 standard. Now, this point is now available in other standards also, in few of the other standards also, but this was the first. 22,000 was the first standard to bring this requirement way back in 2005 itself. So this is one point which we should keep in our mind as our consultant. So please understand that the standard is not only to seek certification or registration, but an organization can self-declare this. Next few new terms have come into 2018. I would like to focus on those points. Please remember, in 3.2, a new terminology has come in, that is action criteria. So please keep in mind, it could be a measurable or observable specification for the monitoring. Monitoring is important. And this is with respect to an OPRP. So please keep in mind, if it is OPRP, then we have to consider it can be a measurable as well as observable thing. Okay, I think I will go a little slow so that everybody can hear it, as there is some disturbance, I have understood. Now, the second is 3.26, which talks about measurement. It is process to determine a value. So please understand what is a measurement. Measurement is a process to determine some value. If there is no value to it, then it is not measurable. Now, this is a new term which has been brought in here, and we have to keep that in our mind. 3.27, monitoring, determining the status of a system or a process or an activity. So, monitoring has to understand the status. Please keep that in mind, status. Any operation, any process, any activity, if the status is known, then that is called, the mechanism by which you obtain that is called monitoring. Now, the next term, 3.3, I'm not going through each and every one. I'm only going through those definitions which have been brought in new in 2018. 3.36, that is process. Now, please understand, this term process here is different from the process which you understand in 9000. This is a set of interactions or interactive activities which transform input to output. Now, this is a major point which we should understand here. Why? Because most of the places, the process, when you talk about, even testing is a process. But here in food safety management system, testing process is not to be considered here. Why? Because testing does not transform the input to output. It only tells you the status. of that particular process. So in food safety management system, the process means sectoral interactive, which transforms any input to output. If there is no transformation in any place, then that is not considered as process. So these are the process which should go into flow diagram. Now, I'm not going through all other clauses in between, even the clause 2, clause 3. Why? Because there are certain things which we have already known through other standards. We directly come to the implementable activities. So in that, we refer here not 4.1, 4.2. Why? Because they have been well understood in the case of ISO and all other standards, which is about the needs and expectation in the context of organization. I'm mainly concentrating on the food safety systems in food safety management systems, food safety requirements in food safety management systems. So keeping that food safety requirements, when we go into this 4.3 is the next, which talks about something about the scope. Now, the scope again is repeated here. This is a different scope, determining the scope of food safety management system. 4.3 talks about one scope, and we have referred one scope in clause number 1 in the first one. That scope is about the standard scope, where and how the standard can be utilized. This is the scope with respect to the entire, for what implementation has to be done. Now, I read through quickly for your understanding. The organization shall determine the boundaries and applicability of the FSMS to establish its scope. The scope shall specify the product and services, process and production sites that are included in FSMS. The scope shall include the activities, the processes, the products or services that can have an influence on the food safety of its end product. So whatever the organization is preparing, its product which is it offering for market, whatever is going to affect that in terms of safety, that needs to be understood. Now the term here, which I have highlighted in red color, I read that boundaries and applicability of FSMS to establish its scope. Now this particular scope requirement in 4.3 was earlier there in 2005 also. Now these boundaries means where the food safety in my organization starts and where it ends. So this mechanism of scope giving in ISO, all of the standards have again been picked up from this particular standard of ISO 22000, which came in 2005. So the boundaries and applicability of FSMS. So where the HACCP starts in my organization. Is it with the receiving of material, or is it of the raw materials being processed or produced in the farm? We're talking about is the food chain. The food chain complete is where the raw materials are produced in the agricultural or any other places. What we used to call in HACCP as farm to fork concept. Farm to fork concept is again taken in here, but you definitely will not be covering the entire chain. So you may be in the middle of somewhere in your organization. So that middle portion, which the organization is, needs to be identified in this scope. This is what the standard is asking us to do here. We go to the next one, 4.4. The terms have been changed in the general requirements. Earlier it used to be establish, document, implement, and maintain. So those have been changed as establish, implement, maintain, update, and continue to improve. So instead of 4, they have made it 5. And those they have changed the document words here. So these documentation words have been removed, and they have made it important that now the organization have to establish the food safety management system. It has to implement the food safety management system. It has to maintain the food safety management system. It has to update the management system and then continually improve to the particular requirement. So the terms which were earlier have been replaced by these: establish, implement, maintain, update, continue. These are the 5 keywords, whatever we as an consultant try to develop in that organization, should ensure that these 5 things are being embedded into the system. Now we come to 7.1.5. Here again, something has been brought in. It is about externally developed elements of the food safety management system. When an organization establishes, maintains, updates, continually improves its FSMS by using externally developed elements of FSMS, including PRPs and hazard analysis and hazard control plan. The organization shall ensure that the provision elements are blah, blah, blah. They're all included in that, which is not important. What we have to pay attention here as a consultant, that we as a consultant have been given authorized to create their required PRPs to be implemented. We can do and conduct hazard analysis on their behalf, and the hazard control plan, that is OPRP plan as well as HACCP plan, can be created by us externally. But then the organization has to ensure that they establish that in totality and they maintain that in totality and they update it and continuity. And the fundamental point, even if you or we all as a consultant develop their PRPs and has a plan, the ownership of this particular 2 requirements and the entire elements of FSMS are on the organization. So now in this document, in the continuation, they say that their control on us as a consultant is through which, and that needs to be documented. So usually what auditors verify here is whether the organization has given the consultant the authority to develop or not. So that particular thing in the contractual agreement between us and our client, to show that you were authorized to develop, should be clearly mentioned. If it is not there, then we may have a problem as a consultant because we have not completely understood 7.1.5 here. So this is the important thing for us. As a consultant, we have authority provided the organization provides us that authority. I think I have made this point clear to everyone. So here it says criteria for evaluation, selection, monitoring of performance and evaluation of external providers of products and services. All these things is on the organizational head and they have to establish it. So this establishment is through the contractual agreement between us and the organization when we develop these to develop also. Now there is a point to understand. Consultation is different from documentation, is different from trainings. Please understand these 3 terms. Consultation means just to explain how to implement each requirement. Training is what the standard is asking us to do. Whereas documentation means the point which I discussed a little while ago. So that's what we have to understand. So in 7.1.6, we have to take care of ourselves with respect to if we develop, then the organization has to have their criteria to evaluate us in our selection, and they should monitoring the performance and reevaluate of our external provision, this particular of implementing or documenting or training to them in this regard. Next. So in the next, where the changes and where we should be considering is an important point. In the prerequisite programs in clause number 8.2 is the new standard. 8.2.3, when selecting and or establishing PRPs, the organization shall ensure that applicable statutory, regulatory, and mutually agreed customer requirement. Now, as a consultant, we should consider these to a particular organization where we have gone, which of those criteria which we are talking about. Because these PRPs are now mandatory in Indian context, as in regulation for licensing in Schedule 4. And there are 4 parts: part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, which we have understood a little in last week during the legal requirements of food safety of FSSAI. So which particular one is applicable to the industry? We have to help them out in understanding and adopt those things which are mentioned there. If it is a meat industry, if it is a catering industry, if it is a dairy or other manufacturing industries. So 2, 3, 4, 5, which one is applicable? We should be in a position to explain and guide them. And please consider this last wording: the organization, the one which is in red, should consider, though this is one should requirement in the standard. Entire standard, there is only one should requirement, and that is in 8.2.3. The applicable part of ISO TS 22002 series, which we understood, have all of us, we understand that 22002 is a technical specification for prerequisite programs for various food industries. Which one is applicable there? So we have to consider in Indian context, our Schedule 4 in regulation for license, that is for this statutory and regulatory. Then we have to consider ISO TS 22002 dash for various industries, for packaging, for processing, for feed preparation, for agriculture. So there are different standards, dash 1, dash 2, dash 3, dash 4, which one is required. And then please do not forget the organization's agreed customer requirements. They are to be identified when we are helping them out. So 3 things we have to keep in mind. If it is for Indian products, then regulation for licensing, Schedule 4, then go to the relevant part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, plus ISO 22002 -1, -2, -3, -4, whichever is applicable. Then we should also keep in mind the agreed customer requirements. We should understand that all these 3 things should be taken into consideration when we are developing prerequisite programs for our clients. Again, we go to the next one, that is the additional requirement in 8.3. It talks about traceability. The traceability system, we have got so many things in it. I focus, you may read it on your own later on, but what I want to keep the main point into your mind as a developers and a consultants is documented information as evidence of traceability system shall be retained. Now, what does this mean? The last para in red color. Evidence of traceability system shall be maintained. This is a new requirement here. The traceability system was there in the earlier version of 2005 also. But what is stated here is, it is talking about evidence of traceability system shall be retained. Shall be retained means a record of exercise carried out to understand that traceability system is perfect, needs to be created, and we should have it in a defined, we should keep that record for defined period. So what is, as per the old ISO 9000 requirement, the retention of records point is being brought in here. So retention of traceability exercises which the organization can, that minimum period What should be the minimum period? Let us understand that. Minimum is the shelf life of the product or any legal requirement. Now, shelf life of the milk or any such short, 1 day, 2 day shelf life, bread, etc., 3 days, 4 days. It is not that you are going to keep the record for only 2 days for this particular product, because as per FSSAI, all food safety related documents should be maintained for minimum 1 year. That is a legal requirement there. So we have to understand that 3 points. One, whether it is 1 day, 2 day, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 1 month, etc., the record of these things should be maintained for legal purpose for 1 year, or else the shelf life. If the product has a shelf life of 2 years or 1.5 years, you cannot be keeping it now for 1 year. Even law says that as per the shelf life. So this is what is the cue here. We have to keep that also in mind. So when we are developing the systems into the record retention, this particular traceability mock exercise or an exercise activity which the organization is calling by the name has to be maintained and retained for that much time. So the organization shall verify and test the effectiveness of the traceability system. So one, all traceability records. Two, the test record should be created and maintained. Now we come to the next one, which is about 8.4, emergency preparedness and response. Those who have been carrying out for other management systems, especially for occupational health and safety and environmental management systems, they understand this terminology very well. This was hardly 2.5 lines in 2005 version, but in here 8.4, they have subdivided it into 8.4.1, 8.4.2, and others also. So in generally, it is actually asking earlier this requirement, which is in red, documented information shall be established and maintained. So the procedural document was not the requirement in 2005, which has been added here. So documented information shall be established and maintained means we need to create a documented procedure for emergency situations. For their situations, each situation is different. So the preparedness against each situation and the response. So the 8.4.2, the new requirement added in here, the organization shall respond to actual emergency situation and incidents by, so they have included the term incidents here, ensuring applicable statutory regulatory requirements are identified for this, communicated internally, communicated externally, and in these things take actions to reduce the consequence of emergency situations appropriate to the magnitude of emergency or incident. So incident one, which was not there in earlier standard, has been brought in here, and the potential food safety impact. All these things should be identified in this procedure or a SOP or a document, whatever you call it. Now, if you look into the C, the red color at the bottom, which I have highlighted, periodically test procedures where practical. Please understand this. This was intentionally there, and when I used to develop for my clients, used to have this included in the verification plan of food safety, all the emergency situations. So that was an idealistic requirement, not a stated requirement, but intentional, which now the standard has stated very clearly. Periodically tested procedure where practical. So for whatever different emergency situations which the organization has, if that has to be periodically tested, and the word where practical is there, please understand where practical, most of these situations, please understand, we are not considering product recall here. There is a separate clause for that. Apart from that, all emergencies which are going to affect the food safety need to be periodically tested. Now, when we talk of the word periodically, There is no time lapse given here except for this word periodically, but maximum liberation which an organization can take is annual. The more you do, better, but you may not be having that much time. You cannot advise them like that as a consultant, but at least annually once. Suppose there are 3 emergency situations which they identify because of their location and other environmental effects, then all 3 should be checked once in a year for their, and then we have to maintain a record of these testing, periodically tested procedures. So these red color ones which I have mentioned in each slide are the terms which I am focusing on to make you understand and have a better consultation being done, better value being given to our clients. We go to the next one. Now, 8.5.1, which was 7.2 earlier, we all know, oh, sorry, it was in 8.7.3 only earlier, it is 8.5.1. The title itself is very clear. I want to emphasize on that. Preliminary steps. In a HACCP, we know there are 5 preliminary steps. Now, it was not clear in there when they were talking of HACCP also, but this title is there since 2005 in ISO 22000. Please keep in mind, enable hazard analysis. The term is enable hazard analysis. So whatever we are doing in these 5 preliminary steps, they should help us in conducting hazard analysis, which is principle 1 of HACCP. The standard has clearly outlined this. All preliminary steps, whether it is a team or a product description or flow diagram or intended use, all these things are so that the team is able to conduct hazard analysis. So another thing which most of us miss is, this is there since 2005 version also, but then we miss it. To carry out the hazard analysis, preliminary documented information shall be collected. Now, most of us do refer to so many other things when we are helping them out. We ask them so much of information. All this information is now a preliminary document information, and we need to collect them, we need to maintain them, and it has to be updated by the food safety team. So the food safety team should provide all this preliminary information to us if we as an external resource are developing their food safety plan. So if we are to meet, we have to get this information from them. If they are doing on their own, you should guide them in having these informations collected and maintained, and the latest information being taken. For example, now we have got COVID-19. This is the latest. How does it affect the food? Can it be communicated to food? Yes, no, we know that. But then all this information has to be collected in a documented form and maintained. Auditor can ask this question. How do you come to conclusion it won't go through food? So we need to have this documented information from with the organization to show them that they have understood this requirement. That's why they have not taken it as a hazard in their food. Otherwise, that will also be a biological hazard in the food. This shall include, but not limited to, applicable statutory, regulatory, and the customer requirements, organization's product process, and that's all is the thing. What I want to focus your mind is all information which the organization has to collect, one team has to collect all information and keep that document for conducting hazard analysis. It is not our whims and fancies. The experience is one part. Second part, the standard is asking that based on this information only, the hazard identification and its analysis has to be taken up. We come to 8.5.1.4 intended use. This is another thing. Most of the people take it up. They do identify, but then they miss out certain parts which are in red color. Let me read through the clause first. The intended use, including responsible, expected handling, including responsibly expected handling. What is expected handling of the end product? That, and what is the intended use? It should be clearly documented. For example, how do we consume noodles, RTE noodles? Can we open up the pack and put it into our mouth and chew, just like biscuits? No, there is some additional requirement to be done. What is that? That is the intended use. If they open up the pack and eat directly, that is not intended use, that is unintended use. If anyone eats the noodle, opening the bag just like that and chew it up, that is unintended use. What is the intended use? That it should be boiled in water for 2 to 3 minutes, soaked in it, and then consumed after adding the. So that portion has to be understood. Similarly, there are many things which people don't understand. Only fundamental thing is they go by the intended use. They don't understand the unintended use, but reasonably expected mishandling. Now, let me take another example here. We as a children, we all knew there was a malt food. I don't take the name or a brand name, but still there was a malt food. And there was advertisement on that I don't drink it, but I eat it. Now, please understand, eating that particular malt food directly may be unintended use of the organization. Intended use is that malt food powder should be mixed in hot water and then it is supposed to be consumed. But the reasonably expected is the children will open up the bottle, take the malt into their hand, pop it into their mouth, and they eat it. So that is unintended use of the end product. And that is reasonably expected to happen. That is reasonable misuse or misuse. If it is not mishandled, that is reasonably expected misuse of the end product. So this particular, for every food, we have to identify these things. This is very important in intended use. When we are developing, if we are not in a position to understand these, if we are not able to understand the misuse of the end product which the organization is making, and we don't document them and we do not explain and communicate to the consumer on this, because it has to be maintained as a documented information. If you don't close it up, then our hazard analysis will go in a different direction. So we have to be very careful in writing this unintended use. Here it is not just the way we are supposed to eat it. We have to identify this red colored statement. I repeat, unintended use, but reasonably expected of mishandling and misuse of the end product. What is mishandling? The milk packet is bought in the morning and kept on the table till afternoon. That is mishandling. So all these things have to be understood. We go to the next one. Okay, thank you. Can we quickly go to the next slide? I'm not able to move it here. Yeah, thank you. Preparation of flow diagram. Here we should give more concentration on product and product categories. Please understand the categorization or the grouping, what you used to call earlier, is based on the similar process or process manufacturing processes. If manufacturing process is different, then the product is different. So the number of processes or different products based on the manufacturing process that many number of HACCP systems or HACCP documents need to be created. And then the flow diagram shall be clear, accurate, and sufficiently detailed to the extent needed to conduct. Again, please keep that in mind, that flow diagram should help in hazard analysis. We go to the next because the time is short. I have taken a little more time in the earlier documents. Karthik, can you move to the next slide? I'm not able to do it here. Please, next one is on-site confirmation. This is a new word, and it's not new. In the clause, it is separately given as a separate clause number for the first time. It was mixed up with the flow diagram. And the highlighted portion, which I want all of you to understand, that the on-site verification, whatever corrections when the team has conducted on-site verification, that particular flow diagram should be retained as documented information. So a record showing that what all changes or what corrections or what actually they have done on site when they did it should be maintained. Next, in hazard identification, you can go through the entire clause, but I pay attention to the last para. The organization shall maintain documented information concerning the determination of acceptable levels and justification of the. So people usually keep the acceptable level of the hazards in the end product. But what they do not do is the justification of this acceptable level. You can play the justification maybe with respect to the law or with respect to the customer requirement. So that justification, how much of the hazard is acceptable in the end product should be explained in the documentation. Next one, selection. This is important. I would like you to pay attention here. This is the biggest one because in 22,000, the HACCP flow diagram is not applicable. What is acceptable is categorization of the control measures. We can have other session to understand what are control measures. Please understand PRPs are different and control measures are different. We will quickly go through that ahead. What I want you to hear is we have to keep in mind likelihood of failure of its functioning, severity of consequence of the failure of its functioning, effect of identified significant food safety hazards, location related to other control measures, whether it is specifically established or applied to reduce the hazards to acceptable level, whether it is a single measure or a part combined control measure. All these factors have to be taken into consideration while we are categorizing the control measure. Now, what is likelihood of, it is not the failure or the acceptance of any hazard, but it is about the control measure failure. We have to understand that. Control measures have to be taken. Here we have to understand that all these things from A, B, and then subpart 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8.5.2.4, A, B, and C, all these things are with respect to control measures only, nothing to do with hazard there. Next one. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is just to spoke again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is a way to understand how we can classify them. Based on the combined calculations of all these things, we should come to conclusion whether it is to be controlled as at OPRP or at CCP. Now, this takes a little more time because there are other slides. You can go through this and you can ask me directly afterwards. Now, what is a hazard, which we usually perform? People do misunderstand this thing. Usually these hazards are classified into two types. One, which is associated with the material from which the food is prepared. Another one is, which is introduced from the processes and facilities. Now, first type of hazard, which are from the materials. If it is not done, then the hazards are passed on to the consumers. Second type of hazards are actually those which have sources other than material. Even if these are not controlled, then will be again passed on to consumer. So the food becomes non-consumable or dangerous or hazardous to the consumer because of these two types of hazards. Now controls. First type of hazards are usually to be controlled through the process activities which can be called, which actually we are now called in this standard as process or process steps. Second type of hazards are to be controlled at the source itself and not through the process steps. So the first type of controls at some process step which controls the hazards step which controls, and the control methods at the step, control activities at that particular step, and what is the process step which transforms the raw material into finished product, which we understood in the standard definition. Those are the control measures. Please keep this in mind. These are the control measures. Now for those controls which are of second type, which are where the source is controlled, the source is controlled, not the process step, then that is your prerequisite program. That is your prerequisite program. So these prerequisite programs are not to be taken into control measure assessment. Only the control measures are to be taken into control measures. Okay, I quickly go through that. Again, this gets stuck if it is gone. Karthik, can you put it to the next slide, please? I'm not able to do it from here.
No, so you have the control. I can't do it. Huh? Okay.
Okay. Measurable and monitorable. We should understand these two terms again because of OPRPs and these are there. Measurable means a phenomena where it has some parameter with measurement and where we have a value. If we don't have a value or we can't measure measurements, some parameter like length, breadth, or weight, etc. If they are not there, then it is not measurable. If they are there, then only it is measurable. Now, monitorable means a phenomena where there is no parameter, but operation can be observed through certain actions, or this is a visual sense, all our senses when we use to understand whether the operation is performed properly or not. That is called monitorable. Now, these two terms have been added into the standard again. We should understand that also. So measurable is where certain temperature, pressure, length, weight, etc. are there. This is where it's, in case of monitorable, it is a visual, sound, smell, taste, touch. If these are there, then they are monitorable but not measurable. So please keep in mind, the standard is saying those which are monitorable, not through measurements, are OPRPs. Those which can be, they can be CCPs. That's what the standard is saying. Now, in the hazard control plan, this one thing which we have to understand, there are no two different terminologies as hazard plan and OPRP, which we are earlier saying. They have clubbed it into one. They are calling it both as hazard control plan. It's a common plan for all hazards, whether it is through OPRP or it is through HACCP or at CCP. So this is what we have to understand. CCP and OPRPs are now differentiated very clearly with the term of measurability and monitorability. Now, determination of critical limit, very important. Please keep in mind the rationale for the limit of CCP has to be documented. Means the reason why you choose that as your CCP limit, why that is your limit, critical limit, the rationale, the reasoning, the justification for that limit. Similarly, if you say this is my measurable activity for OPRP, then that measurable should be documented. The rationale should be documented in both cases. Monitoring system, CCP, OPRP, please understand the frequency has to be within an adequate time frame. The frequency shall be capable of timely detection of any failure. If the timely detection is not possible, then that is not an adequate frequency. Similar to that is in OPRP. So in either CCP or OPRP, the monitoring frequency should be in a position to capture the fault as and when it happens, not later on. So we should understand that it could be a subjective data, it could be visual inspection, etc., whatever it may be. If it is not detectable, then the frequency is not adequate. That's where we have to keep in mind and insist and make our clients understand this point. Implementation is a new thing which has been brought in here. This is a clause which has been come up here. Why? Because developed and handed over by consultant, most of the people will keep it in file, and then only when auditor comes, either they are smart enough, they answer, otherwise they look towards consultant. So please understand, after developing, the role of consultant is over here. Implementation is an organization requirement. The standard is very clear here. And people were not implementing it. Written is something else, and they were adopting the frequency or the corrective actions as per their routine activities. So the mismatch is there between the plan and the actual implementation. So this clause of implementation, which was intentionally there in earlier standard, has been included here. The words of implementing the hazard control plan has been brought in here in this standard for the first time. This was the intentional requirement earlier, but has been brought in as a stated requirement here. Now, control of monitoring and measure, it's just everything is same. We know, we understand that what is calibration, but I draw your attention to this term in red color here, where no standard exists. The basis used for calibration or verification shall be retained as documented information. Now, this is a very typical thing which we may not be understanding. In a meat industry where slaughter is going on, the requirement is that the animal should not be burdened. And even that wordings is there in our legal requirement of Schedule 4, Part 3, no, Part 4 for meat industries, that an animal should not be put into pain. Now, how much sharpness should be to that knife which should be used to slit the throat of the animal for slaughter? Do we have a parameter there? Who can give me the parameter of sharpness? I don't find one. So the mechanism to understand how to calibrate the sharpness of that knife to control that, because that is very important. Why? Because at the slaughtering, it should be properly done and entire blood should ooze out. If entire blood doesn't ooze out from the body, then that will be hazardous for the consumers later on. So the sharpness cannot be monitored. So what is the base used for calibrating for all knives used in that slaughterhouse? The mechanism shall be retained as a documented information. The next one I would like to point out is where the equipment or the process environment is found not conforming. Suppose last year you checked, the calibration was done, the temperature error was 0. This year, the same instrument was again calibrated, you get an error of +4. Now, in this period, when does that error crop up? Last year to this year, you never know. So the standards is very clearly asking us to have that thing under control. The organization shall assess validity of the previous measurement results when the equipment or process environment is found not to conforming to requirements. So that product again is a very dangerous and Karthik, can you push on to the next one? I'm not able to do it from the side. Yeah. Last, verification. Please understand, the standard is asking us to have a verification plan, a documented verification plan, and it should have purpose, method, frequencies, responsibilities for verification. Here is what I used to add, the emergency preparedness also tested into verification, even the mock exercise for traceability and withdrawal, everything I used to keep it as in our plan. Now the standard is asking us what we should verify. 1A, PRPs, B, hazard control plan, and blah, 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 blah. So please, at least in your verification plan of your clients, please ensure that the prerequisite programs, whatever has been defined by you, and the hazard control plan means the different CCPs and OPRPs, all are verified with respect to this plan, and that should be ensured. And otherwise, if there is any failure here, down the line in the last it says that we have to control those non-conforming product, which is now a potentially hazard product in a better way. Well, these are the lesser people pay attention when we are doing it. All others are HACCP requirements, which we all understand that. So that's why I have focused on these points from the standard, which we usually or very sometimes, not all, few miss out when we are developing systems. I now, with this presentation, I request all of you to pay attention to these final points and ensure that your documents are included into this. Thank you.